Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning, beautiful people that have joined us today for this incredible Most Awards 2022 webinar. I am honestly so excited that we're getting into this because it means that we're that much closer to the actual Most Awards for 2022. Hello, my name is Zanele Potelwa. I am going to be your moderator for today as we have this incredible panel that has decided to join us and just impart knowledge in terms of what it is that we can get from each other in terms of growing and becoming a better media industry and allowing ourselves to be in on how to keep up with evolving market trends, initiatives, and opportunities as a whole. And, you know, from these different webinars that we've been having, I honestly think that so much more comes from it. But thank you so much for joining once again and allowing us to not just have you with us, but for all of us to share and to learn, because at the end of the day, you too can ask questions. It's not just me. You can come through, send it in on the chat, and we will be getting it to our panelists. So the Most Awards 2022 are literally not too far away at all. So first and foremost, I need to say that yay, I hope you have your tickets. Tickets are limited and they are officially on sale. So the last chance to get your tickets is round about now, and to buy it, www.quicklink.co.za/book tickets. And it's that easy. Come on through and be a part of celebrating excellence, of celebrating you, of celebrating the awesome people that we have on our panel today. And more than anything else, just allowing our industry to grow. So I told you that I am Zanele Potelwa from 5FM as well as SABC1. But today I am moderating something that I believe is going to allow us to leave a little bit better. So the Most Awards, of course, are something that has the goal to 100% inspire media owners as well as media agencies to improve the efficacy of their businesses through service performance, finding out what it is that we're doing right, what are we doing wrong, how can we be better, and more than anything else, like I said, to celebrate excellence in the media industry and encourage healthy competition. How do we get better if we don't have the competition, So today, we're going to be learning from some of these industry leaders that we have got to join us today, which I'm so excited about. So let's get into actually just welcoming them right about now, because honestly and truly, I want us to jump right into learning and getting into what it is when we as a people and as an industry can grow. So first and foremost, the Vice President of Commercial and Content Distribution at Paramount Africa, Srini Naika, is on our panel today. Srini, how are you?
I'm very well, Zanele. Thank you very much for the opportunity. Looking forward to sharing some insights with the rest of the market. Thank you very much.
Thank you for coming through. I'm very excited for us to be chatting to you because I feel like you're very different in terms of all the people we've had over the last couple of weeks. So I am very, very keen to hear what you have got to say today. But of course, alongside Srini, we have got Lindile Xoko, the Chief Revenue Officer from the Prime Media Group. Lindile, are you good today?
I'm great, Zanele. Thank you very much. Thanks for the opportunity to also have this conversation with you today.
Of course. Are you at the Prime Media building? Because I think I know those ceilings. I see them. Yes.
I am.
Perfection. Also on our panel today, it is Graham Denise, the Group Strategy Director of SA at SSA Carrot. Hello, Graham. Are you good today?
I am great. Thank you, Zanele. Thank you for having me. Small correction. It's Cara.
Oh, carrot. You know, carrots.
We've had it for years. Everyone calls us carrot for some reason, like a diamond carrot or a carrot that you eat. But believe it or not, the tea is silent.
It's because you are very, very, I will say you're special to us, just like a diamond, Graham. So thank you.
Okay, we'll go with that. It's fine.
Perfect. Amazing. Thank you so much. Also on our panel today, it is Kgaugelo Masenya, a strategist at the Media Shop. Kgaugelo, are you good today?
I'm very well, thank you. How are you, Zanele?
I'm amazing. All the better for us all being here and getting to learn from each other. Absolutely. And finally, also on our panel, we have got the head of marketing at MediaMark. It is Charlie Winnell. Charlie, are you good?
I'm great. Thanks, Zanele. Nice to be here.
So great for all of us to be here 100%. And I am so glad that we've got such a multifaceted panel, because I feel like we're going to be getting different bits of knowledge from different parts of the media industry. And I know that each and every one of our panelists, they have something to share and something that we can learn today. So before we get right into it, I did just want to thank our partners, which are, of course, Jacaranda FM, Prime Media Broadcasting, GH Media, Gagasi FM, Heart FM, DSTV Media Sales, Spark Media, Paramount Africa, MediaMark, The Media Shop, Arena Holdings, Cara, YFM, Nalesa Media, Talk Media, Ebony and Ivory, Mediology, Cape Talk 702-947, EWN, KFM, and The Media Online. And with us, knowing that there are 103,200 billion, listen properly, there's not many days left, honestly and truly, before we get into the most awards for 2022. So please do make sure, once again, I will remind you to book your ticket. It is www.quicklink.co.za/book tickets. So what exactly are we getting into today? I told you it is how to keep up with evolving market trends, initiatives, and opportunities. And essentially, we're doing that because as much as everything has changed over the last couple of years and everything is returning back to normal, our world was turned upside down for such a long time that we were constantly having to create, innovate, and deliver dynamic content to an ever-changing audience, especially people deciding that they want to be inside, then they want to be outside, then they want to be this and that. And that is why today, in terms of keeping on top of market trends, new initiatives, and just absolutely everything that is happening all around us, we want to stay ahead of the competition. But how exactly can we do that? And how can we identify those trends? So this is why we're having this panel discussion to find out how to keep up to date, to stay relevant and effective. So Srini, I'm going to start off with you first and foremost, please, because I obviously said that, it is difficult to keep up with trends because things are ever changing. So how do you keep current with the latest media and marketing trends as the person that you are and your team?
Great, thanks, Anelia. Thanks for the question. I think before I even start, there's a whole lot of macro factors to actually take into account before you even get micro. I mean, within South Africa as a territory, you've got load shedding, and you've got all these economic issues that's facing all our consumers together with business. Then you've got digital being driven by the government, which is obviously a major imperative for the country, and that's going to affect communications and the way owners actually think. And then you've got a whole lot of other aspects like the number of devices that's being consumed compared to basically 2 years ago, and mobile's basically kind of taking a leapfrog effect in terms of consumption of media and advertising by consumers. But all that said, it's all about reinventing yourself, whether you agency space or the broadcast space, because it's not what it was. But the scary part is it's changing quicker than ever. So, we maybe used to reinvent ourselves over like 5 years in the past, and we have a 5-year long-range plan from a strategic perspective. Now it's about maybe within a year, because within a year, things change. So it's about reshaping your currencies. It's about reshaping the way you basically can assist, depending where you play. As if it's a broadcaster, reshaping your business model to basically make sure that your clients stay, kind of get out of the clutter, because clutter and fragmentation is also a major issue that's actually facing most of us right now. And then there's the global piece. The global piece is affecting our territory largely. If you're looking at fast, free ad-supported streaming television or radio for that matter, together with basically the streaming capabilities that we are starting to get through fiber connection in our country. I mean, Telkom just announced yesterday or the day before, they've got access to 950,000 homes that have access to fiber.
Sure.
So consumers are actually consuming content, audio, digital, video content for that matter, has changed. So we need to reshape our model to basically make sure that basically we stand out as media owners or broadcasters or as an agency actually delivering a solution such that we're not actually living in the past. I've said a lot. I'm going to stop there. There's a lot more. I'll hand over to my colleagues as well.
No, Srini, please, this is why you're here. We want to hear more. We want to hear as much as you possibly can. So please don't even stop yourself. But I really like what you said there about reshaping the model, because at the end of the day, I feel like a lot of people just tell themselves, you know what, if you want to know what's happening with the kids, just jump on TikTok and it'll tell you. But as much as it'll tell you a few things about them, you always kind of need to look at yourself, and then as well as look at how much deeper you can actually go, which is then why I want to come to you, please, Lindile, because, you know, as the leader of a business division, what would you say is the pressure level of constantly needing to keep up and be ahead of trends? And how does one even go about doing that?
Excuse me. Thanks for the questions, Zanele. I think let me start by saying to you, Zanele, Khaukhelo, and Charlie, and all of the viewers that are on here that are female, Happy Women's Month.
Yes. Thank you so much, Lindile. Lindile is scoring brownie points here. Yes. Thank you, Lindile. Go ahead.
We absolutely honor and cherish you. So, and we really enjoy having you as colleagues, friends, and family.
Thank you.
Instead of keeping ahead with trends, it's critical. Especially, and this is what I'm going to say now is going to sort of underscore a lot of the conversation that we're going to have here tonight. Our industry is one that is a mature industry and market, and therefore that actually underpins the need to be able to keep ahead of trends, because if you don't do that, you then allow for outside forces to influence and affect your performance in the industry, as well as how we deliver that value. So it's absolutely necessary and critical for one to be able to keep ahead, also for the sustainability of the business. Because if you're not innovating, if you're not evolving as an organization and you're staying put, what ends up happening is that the needs of the clients, as well as the needs of the elements that allow you to be in business, move ahead and leave you behind. And therefore, the sustainability of yourself as an organization is then impacted. I mean, we've seen all of the examples, and I hate to name the names of the organizations that had failed at the peak of their performance to innovate and evolve themselves as an organization. I mean, we look at the likes of Nokia, we look at BlackBerry, we look at the Kodak story, and we look at MySpace. And therefore, if you're not constantly evolving to keep ahead of the trends so that you can continue to deliver the value in the manner that the market wants you to deliver it, then you're going to be left behind. And therefore, it's just a slippery slide to obsolescence after that. So us, especially now being in a mature industry and market, we have to move differently, and we have to now be cognizant of what those trends are. Because if you think about it, Zanele, as well as the consumer preferences have changed. I mean, Srini has just spoken about that. This proliferation of devices, of different types of way to consume content. There's many devices. The internet is becoming more accessible. There's television. There's many screens, and I'm certain that each of us here can think of how many screens are at your house, and therefore how you're consuming that. So instead of also looking at competition in a traditional sense, we're actually competing for the attention of the people of the person that's consuming that content. So how we show up in those different spaces is absolutely critical for us as the industry to be able to keep up with those particular trends, and also move differently to how we've moved it, in how we look at competitors and how we look at peers and partners in the industry. It has to be fundamentally different so that we can continue to innovate and deliver the value for the consumers that consume our value.
100%, Lindile, especially with you just talking about how much has changed. Also, I love how you went, you know, I'd hate to name all of these people, and then you named all of them. Thank you so much for being forthcoming with it, because it is true. Things such as BlackBerry, they had us in the palm of their hands, and yet it just happened the way that it did, I suppose, unfortunately. However, that is why we have conversations like this, where we can find out how we can keep ahead of the trends, how we can keep on top of them, how we can continue to innovate and be part of those ever-changing trends and be a part of the evolution, essentially. Please remember, if you are joining us today, thank you so much. And it would be so appreciated if you came through with absolutely any questions that you have, because we have a wealth of knowledge here with our panelists, and they are ready to answer your questions. So pop them in the chat box and we will be getting to them, yeah? But I also am so glad that Ulindile mentioned about just how much everything is changing in the media industry, because one of the biggest things that has changed changed is digital behaviors that are emerging and, you know, the ways in which people are consuming. So Graham, I want to please come to you. Can you shed some light on what some of those new digital behaviors actually are that are emerging at the moment?
Yeah, thanks, Anele. So there's a couple from a strictly digital point of view. I'll be honest, I'm always hesitant to talk about digital only. Because my whole sort of sphere is all channels integrated. But I would say that from my point of view, what I'm seeing is we're seeing this slow but very deliberate move from an obsession with tactics and bottom of the funnel activities into a broader, more all-encompassing marketing solution that digital can offer.
Yeah.
So, you know, traditionally digital's, you know, been, you know, sits in that sort of social media, search, display, you know, we're sort of often tweaking down funnel pieces. And I would say that, you know, bringing in the new literature, the traditional literature, you know, from the likes of your Byron Sharps, Ehrenberg Bass Institute, Les Binet, Peter Field, Tom Roach, et cetera, I could rattle them off the way, like Nadine mentioned names, I'm going for it too.
Love this.
So I would say, you know, there's a lot of marketing science out there, and I think what's happening is a lot of people thought that marketing science applied to traditional channels, and the narrative that's now sort of sitting is that marketing science applies to all channels, including digital. So you're seeing digital marketers or digital practitioners starting to look at that broader marketing science type of look and seeing how digital can be a facilitation mechanic or a utility-based mechanic through the 4 Ps, product, price, place, and promotion. So you're not seeing digital as this is a digital ad. We're now looking at digital, how can digital help you? How can we as brands use digital to create better moments, better experiences for consumers? And that for me is a super, super exciting space, because that's when digital is knitted into every single element of a consumer journey. So I would say that's a I don't want to call it a trend, but sort of something that's been happening, and I'm really, really enjoying it. And something that I've often said to people is, and it's not mine, you know, it comes from, if you listen to any of these marketing professors from around the world, they'll always talk about tactics and they'll talk about strategy, right? And I think for a really long time in digital, we potentially got lost in a sea of tactics, shiny new objects, brilliant carrots we found.
Indeed.
And we dug them up and we're like, we have to be on this thing, we have to use this thing. And actually you didn't. You really didn't, because if it didn't actually make sense within your product, price, place, and promotion and your consumer look and the objectives and goals of your organization, you didn't have to use that particular thing. 100%. So, for example, TikTok, not having a go at TikTok, I love TikTok, but TikTok is a tactic, right? Just like Facebook is a tactic. A TVC is a tactic. A radio ad is a tactic. We've got to understand how all of those channels contribute to a greater whole. And I think digital has a massive role to play there. And I think we're seeing a huge shift towards that broader spectrum of thinking in terms of what digital can actually do.
I love that. And the thing is, you know, sometimes people will get it wrong and they think that their audience is simple. And if you just put something in front of them, something shiny, then they're just going to be like, yes, like you said. But I think that many audiences can see through a lot of different things. So Graham, I think you're 100% correct. I'm not
necessarily referencing audiences. I'm referencing us as an industry. We've done it a million times. New exciting things come down and they look amazing and you want to be a part of them because they're exciting. But sometimes, let's just say, sometimes the things that aren't as shiny as and aren't as new and amazing can actually be way more effective.
100%.
Than shiny things. So you've got to take it all into consideration.
Sometimes the magic is in the simplicity, and that is it. But something that isn't always too simple to do is kind of taking global trends and bringing them to South Africa, or taking something from South Africa and trying to incorporate it with what's happening around the world. So Charlie, I want to come to you, please, and ask you, what are some of the media trends globally that we should be incorporating into the South African media landscape? Like I said, something that's not too easy to do, but sometimes needs to be done.
Thanks, Danele. So yeah, there's so many really exciting global trends. You know, some of the ones that come to mind, the the trend of brevity. So much research done around that. Sandboxing in the age of change. 3D marketing tech that's coming now into the digital outdoor space. But the two I really want to talk about is, the first one is the trust as a marketing commodity, or you could actually call it the distrust default. And there are so many research papers out there that have been done really recently, up until a couple of months ago. Edelman barometer was done at the end of last year. They tested the American market, and basically we're living in an age where consumers distrust more than they trust. And it's, it's done through various reasons. I think Srini was mentioning it, but whether it's global factors, or whether it's politics, or fake news, and even dodgy or unethical advertising practices. But closer to home, Nielsen did a trust in advertising survey recently, actually at the end of last year, and they really see the trust gap widening in terms of the media choices that marketers can make. In a nutshell, what they're saying is that radio and TV and some of the other traditional mediums are still twice as likely to be trusted. And then as you go down the funnel, digital social media, less likely to be trusted, but important in the mix. And that's what we're hearing, is that you have to have a mix. And traditional's not dead, but trust is a huge thing. And the second one is the rise. This one's exciting. The rise of the iconic sonic branding. Yeah. And it's really exciting for me in the radio space. But we've been talking about it for years, but it's changed, because now we're looking at sonic branding as a measure to counteract the attention deficit of multi-screening. So Kantar did a research study in November last year called the Media Mastership Recipe for Success. And they outlined that the 30-second TV commercial ends with the big bang kind of thing. Yeah. But what they found is that you have 2 seconds to capture your market's attention. And very often, if you have a sonic trigger or a sonic cue, you can bring them back, because by then they've drifted off to their device. Because of the multi-screening. So it's really interesting. And in the Cannes Awards this year, there was a brilliant case study done by Netflix, and they've got an audio cue that, where you download a Netflix movie, you hear that, and they ran it across all mediums to try and really create an iconic branding, sonic branding. Because we all know about McDonald's, but the Netflix, I urge you to go and watch that. It's brilliant.
Yes, sure. And I definitely think that, at the end of the day, when it does come with these global trends that we need to put into the South African media landscape, it helps, Charlie, for us to have people like you who genuinely understand how we can do so. And also, I'll say more than anything else, who are excited for us to be able to do so, which I really, really like. But Charlie, you really, really mentioned some really important things in terms of that. And that's why, Kgaugelo, I want to come to you, please, because of course, Charlie was giving us a little bit of data in terms of what it is in terms of playing in that realm. I want to ask you, what role does data play in predicting and evolving trends in the media landscape, particularly from a way in which we're able to get that data and use it efficiently?
Yeah, data is very important. I think it forms the basis of what we call insights, what we call trends, what we ultimately going to base our decisions on. Data is the starting point to all these things, right? It gives us that credibility. There's one thing to make an observation, but it's another thing to make sure, like, you're proving the fact that this is something that's going to work. So the use of data, I think back in the day, there was this whole conversation around big data, right? And even though it's not as much as labeled as big data, it's still very relevant in terms of doing the research, discovering, if we are going to talk about consumer behavior, what does that look like and what are we basing it over? So it gives us that credibility. It gives us that necessary substantiation in terms of when we are dealing with clients. If you're going to choose, for example, your tactics of TikTok's why, and answering that why of the question in terms of, okay, why should I put so much money in a specific platform? So it gives us a great idea in terms of not just where we are, but possibly where we could look forward to in terms of predictions as well as forecasting as well. So in terms of data, it's important for us to mine it, but not just rely wholly on it, but more on the actual interpretation of it, and bring that human element in terms of not just the what, but the how do we use the data. So yeah, no, we definitely need our data. And just on that Netflix one, that was absolutely amazing. I also saw that, and it's like it creates it's that data we're talking about where people saw that sound is something that's recognizable, right?
Yeah.
And so from that data is how we show up from a media point of view and use it to the brand's advantage. So yeah.
So, with you saying that from that data, do we then take that data and almost be like, how can we sort of use it to our advantage and maybe trying to emulate what somebody else has done in some sort of way, but kind of keeping to our DNA as well?
Absolutely. If we look at from a media point of view, like the different trends where we're seeing, for example, the introduction of DTT, we need to keep an eye out on data and what is that doing to our TV audiences, for example. And then respond in terms of how we're investing from TV, how we're changing things and making the necessary movements from a media point of view. So yeah, data is giving us that source of information, and then what we do with it makes the difference.
Sure. So data is Bible. It leads us at the end of the day. I love that. But Srini, I want to come back to you, please, because of course we've been talking about trends and we've been talking about, the different things that we need to keep up with in our ever-changing industry. So may I ask you to enlighten us a little bit and tell us what are some of the trends that we should be aware of right now?
So just as they say, change. I think fragmentation is a constant in our world. Shouldn't be an excuse anymore, I think, for leadership or businesses within the media marketing agency industry. We need to, we should have embraced this a long time ago, and we need to figure out how we actually ride that hurdle.
Yeah.
But just touching on to what Akela said as well, data is becoming more sophisticated. Everybody talks about the big data kind of era we went through. Data is getting very sophisticated, but it's also basically linking up to programmatic. Programmatic is the buzzword. And there's more and more data that we have available as we migrate through multiple distribution platforms. It's gone off the days of just traditional linear, whether it's radio, or TV, or any other mechanism or media mechanism for that matter. It's moving into the streaming world, and having multiple access points to consumers via mobile, television sets, and many other devices allows for basically kind of more data to come in for us to interpret, such that we can get to these individuals much more quicker. But just over and above fragmentation, distribution, I think, is a critical piece that every broadcaster is thinking of right now, because it's gone off the days, as I said earlier, where change took longer and now change is much quicker. And we need to basically bring our content, or however we actually serve the information we want to serve to consumers, in multiple ways that resonates even more deeper. So when it comes to local, it's about the vernacular piece that you need to bring in. It's about basically how the content actually resonates from a diversity perspective. And there's so many other angles that content providers need to consider. OTT, over the top, obviously through telcos, video on demand, we talked about it just now as well through Netflix, FAST, which I mentioned earlier, which is free ad-supported streaming television, are coming, and they're coming quick. So whilst we think these are the trends taking place today, 3 months from now, we have a conversation. I can tell you right now, we're going to talk about something different.
Sure.
And going back to what I started off the conversation with, fragmentation is a constant. Ignore it. Start building the resilience that you build in your business model as whether you're a business owner, media, broadcast agency, to the resilience of your people. And I think that's what's so important right now. And I know I'm maybe skipping and going a little bit ahead of myself, so I'm really sorry. But
no, I'm loving it. Yes, you're dropping gems.
Many organizations need to actually transfer that resilience they want in their business model to their people, because that's lacking right now. So whilst we may have trends, how do we take our people on that journey to basically help us recraft, reshape, innovate around adapting to these trends and accommodating basically what our B2B or our B2C model actually requires from an industry perspective in terms of where we play?
Yes. And I like the word that you use there, innovate, because it is something that people have to constantly be doing. And Lindile, that's why I want to come to you, please, because I feel like, in a sales team, people will always be talking about innovation, creativity, but what role does it actually play in a sales team, particularly those two words, innovation and creativity? And why is it so important?
Absolutely critical, because what for example, our clients are telling us is in certain segments of their markets that they serve, it's extremely competitive. And therefore, they need to be able to break through all of that noise. And if, as an industry, we've basically sold them the same standard packages that are off the shelf, everyone starts to sound the same, then Zanele. What we then need to do then from a Salesforce point of view is to take a step back and see how we can then innovate and then incorporating creativity so that we can break through that and allow our brands to stand out distinctly within all of that noise. And especially if all of us are talking, but most of us are saying the same thing. So innovation is critical, as well as creativity, so that we can break through the noise. The other part of innovation speaks to the point I made earlier on, is things have evolved. And as Srini is saying just now, in a month's time, in 3 months' time, things will continue to change. So we have to innovate in order to be able to serve the needs of our clients so that they stay relevant, top of mind, and the mechanisms that they deliver their key messages are on point. That's where the consumers are preferring to consume that particular content. But then, Zanele, most importantly, that all of that is effective, that it lands. I mean, you saw the report, I think, earlier on, maybe 2 months ago, that came out to say, I think close over 80% of the messages that the media industry sometimes sends out doesn't actually get to the recipient that it's intended for and doesn't land. So then we need to be very much pointed in terms of how do we then drive that effectiveness, that the message gets the distribution mechanism that it requires to get to the person that will consume it, but then the message lands and actually does what it's required to land. So effectiveness is critical. And we have to innovate and be creative in order to be able to do that.
Exactly. Sure. I love that. Yes.
Yeah. And just to add on to that, this is also why I said, even how we look at competitors has to be fundamentally different in terms of the context of where we are. This is why then you've seen recently Prime Media also partnering with Paramount. So myself and Srini sit across where we would have ordinarily been looked as competitors. But now from that distribution point that Srini is talking about, we've become partners to make it easy for the client to be able to plan us, but also to drive that distribution and effectiveness. That's exactly the point that I'm trying to make. So innovating and being creative in how we better serve the industry.
Yes, Lindile and Srini leading the cause that is making sure that we are collaborating. I love that. That's absolutely incredible. And I always know that so many of us understand the fruits that come from collaboration. So Lindile and Graham, I want to quickly just couple you on one thing, because Lindile, you had mentioned the innovation part and how you kind of need to make sure that you are showing people how different you are to your competitors and making yourself stand out. So then when does one look at, I need to innovate now, I need to be a little bit more creative? Is it something you need to look at every now and again in terms of a time period? Or is it when you are kind of assessing the market and then seeing that you only need to then do it? I'm asking you, Lindile, and I'm coming to you, please, Graham.
Oh, okay. All right. Thanks. No, innovation is a constant. It's not something that you do at any specific time or all of that. One, as Rachel said, you have to keep ahead of trends. So you have to know what trends are there, and you always have to be constantly evolving. There's a project I worked on, Zanele, in Europe, for example.
Yeah.
This is over a decade ago, and that's where I learned the need to always be innovating. One, they had an innovation division that invested a lot on just innovating alone. But at the beginning of the financial year, and I was part of that team, they were planning in terms of in the next financial year. So at the beginning of the current financial year, they're already planning in terms of what are those innovations that they're going to be launching a year after that, 2 years after that, 3 years after that, and to read as much as possible in terms of what are those key elements and trends that are going to peak at that time that we need to respond to. But also then each organization has to be dynamic enough, Zanele, that you plan for that, but things do change, as Srini was also talking about. So when something changes or a new piece of data comes in, you must be adaptable enough to be able to evolve whatever that strategy is so that it's suitable, so that you're constantly innovating. And what organizations must try to do is to keep ahead of the trends, not to keep up with the trends. I think that's important. Keep ahead of the trends so that you're the innovator and you set the benchmark, and then you continue to innovate in terms of the next element. So it's not a schedule or a date in a diary that, okay, on Friday the 13th, I'm gonna start innovating. You must continue.
Yes. I love that. And Graham, I want to ask you then, please, do you 100% agree with what Ulindile has just taught us? But I also want to know then, just throw this in with your answer, please, in terms of how everybody has managed to kind of restructure and keep up with the products and services this year to keep their clients and their audiences engaged. Was that as a result of innovation?
That's a double question, isn't it?
Yes, yeah, Graham, I know you can handle it. I trust
making me
you.
think on the spot here quite difficult. Okay, so to answer your first question, yes, I 100% agree with Ndile. It would be rather awkward if I couldn't, I'm sure.
No, we are here to have a discussion, yes.
Yeah. So, but no, 100%. I think the difference is how you structure it and the discipline behind it. So I think everybody on this call will probably nod their heads when I say the first thing that gets cut when budgets get cut is innovation. Innovation is nice to have. But if we can develop, a discipline within our organizations, so within our agencies as well as clients develop the same discipline, which is around sort of a scaled approach, right? So the one that's probably the most famous would be like 70-20-10, right? So you're not going to do the 10 or the 20 unless your 70 is set, and the 70 is your base or your hygiene or your hard yards media or whichever it might be. Making sure your base is solid and you're doing the basics right in your organization is way more important than launching a brand new innovation, right? Because you can launch that innovation and suddenly you develop a whole bunch of demand, but everything else is broken underneath it. Consumer journey is broken and you're dead in the water. So you got to have your base settled right. And from that base, what you would look at is that 70% is your base. 20% on top of that would be taking that base and sort of pulling it or stretching it and into new places you might not have gone before. Nothing too uncomfortable, but you're starting to test a little bit and see where you can push your organization to. And then the last 10% is, that one that is, let's just call it going a little bit crazy and doing something you've never done before. Not too risky, but a calculated risk, I suppose you could say. Yes. And if you look at every task in your organization, or every brief we get as an agency with a 70-20-10 lens or 80-20 lens or 80-15-5 lens, however you want to do it, you can go about that all day. I would say that's a very good thing to do, but everyone has to be disciplined to be able to pull that off. Because otherwise you're going to continue to do 70, and as soon as you push in 20s and 10s, is going to be the answer, no budget for that. Yeah. So you have to understand as an organization why innovation is important, and that has to be there the whole time. And actually, quite frankly, in our office, we've tried to change the word innovation, because what we found is the word innovation itself is cliched and misused. Yeah. So we've tried to find a new word. It's hard to find one. Kind of sitting on impact at the moment, because all media does make an impact, right? So I'm not saying other media doesn't, but a really well-honed, perfectly executed, top-class innovation should deliver a huge amount of impact. So moving away from here's an innovation presentation, or let's do an innovation, talking about let's create huge impact. It's a different brief, right? And it's something a bit more palatable for clients. On your second question, what do agencies do? I think, yes, definitely. If you look at that 70-20-10, there's a beautiful place for agencies to position themselves in that 70-20-10. Because one thing we're damn good at, and I've got competitors on the call here today as well. I won't call them out by name.
Graham, you've told them your impact plan now. My goodness.
Yeah, it's fine. It's fine. It's not proprietary.
Okay.
I just feel that, as media agencies, and shout out to all media agencies, we're a good industry. We're a solid industry, and we do damn good work. The difference is going to come in of how we do that damn good, solid work differently to each other. Yeah. And for me, that's why I feel innovation does underpin how agencies position themselves, because there are tools we can use, there are tools we can buy, but it's who interprets those tools, who uses those tools, and what industry stimuli we use to create a narrative for our clients that helps them solve their problems. And that's what sets us apart.
Sure, I love that. So, Graham, we have a question that actually came from the audience for you, but we're going to get to it in a little bit. If you do have any more questions, please come through, put it in the chat, and we will get to it right before we end off. As you can see, we have a very knowledgeable panel, and of course, they are willing to share with you as long as you are willing to ask. It is a webinar for the Most Awards 2022, and we are finding out today from our incredible panelists how it is that we can make sure that we are 100% keeping up with the evolving market trends, initiatives, and opportunities. So I want to please then come to you, Charlie, because I feel like we've been talking about trends, right? And just in terms of us keeping up with them. But then, sometimes it's difficult to keep up with them. And that's why we want to ask someone as knowledgeable as you, Charlie. What are some of the sources that you prefer to gather that information from and keep up with the trends?
Yeah, Zanelli, I think you're 100% right. It's overwhelming sometimes. Yes. And I am a bit of a podcast nut at the moment, and I subscribe to a whole lot of marketing podcasts. And Tom Reach has actually got a podcast at the moment. He's brilliant. But I also think that we should look closer to home, and we've got some brilliant thought leaders in our industry. People who come to mind are Chris Buerta, who often talks about trends on his social media feed, or somebody like a Gordon Muller, who runs a podcast called The Doc and Guru. I mean, Gordon Muller was the first guy on Twitter. I mean, I think he was on Twitter before all of us. But very often,
founding father, yes,
absolutely. Very often they're at the forefront of trends that can be relevant in South Africa as well. But first-party data research is also fundamental, and I think most media, big media houses these days are researching their own markets to find out what the micro trends are within a different community, for example. So that's really exciting. And then, of course, international, local awards, finding out what's happening around the world, what's relevant, even within our home space. We did so well at Cannes, and it all talks to trends. And I love what Graham was saying about innovation, because actually impact is so much better than innovation, because most things have been done 100 times, but what was the impact kind of thing. And then media houses such as, EGTA, which is the European Broadcasting, TV and Radio Broadcasting Association in the European space. We've got Bauer in the American space. And then Edison, Kantar, Nielsen are really, really huge resources for marketers who really want to find out what the trends are. And they usually have definitive studies that they release on an ongoing basis.
Yes.
So, and TED Talks. Oh, those are brilliant. We need to start our own TED Talk.
I think
do that.
Especially with this panel, I can see a full day, perfect lineup. It's amazing. Also, if only keeping up with trends was as easy as keeping up with the Kardashians, we'd all be in a very good place. But unfortunately, it is not. And that is why, thank you so much, Charlie, for just sharing with us a little bit. Graham, I hope you heard there. Charlie said she loved your impact plan thing there. I told you, you're telling people your secrets, but it's fine. We're here to learn. That is why we are, in fact, here. And Kgogelo, that's why I want to come to you, because it's all good and well for us to be able to keep up with trends and understand what exactly is going on, right? But there then also needs to be the action plan after that. When we see that that's the trend, how are we incorporating that in terms of what we're doing? So then you need to make a little bit of a change sometimes to suit those trends. So Kgogelo, may I please ask you, what tools and tactics do you know that are proven to make change faster, simpler, and more positive for agencies and just media people alike?
In terms of it being faster, simpler, and more positive, that's quite a loaded part of it, because I think you need to sometimes take a step back and identify where are you in terms of the specific change that you want to create. Are you responding to a change? Are you trying to be part of the people pushing a specific change? Are you implementing it from a responsive or proactive point of view? So it's about asking ourselves, what change am I wanting to see, and what role is it? And then that would speak to the tools and the tactics that you use. I think Charlie mentioned a lot of the sources, which in essence form part of that toolbox. We often refer to it as a toolbox at the media shop, and it's about things like your Nielsen's, things like your Kantar, these things are all tools from a global and an industry point of view that gives us that data we spoke about earlier, right?
Yes.
And then the old school, I think the greatest old school tactic that is, I think, proven, in my opinion, is that of immersing yourself in that desired outcome. You know, if it's about the consumer behavior, it's about immersing yourself in that specific consumer. It's about speaking, having those conversations, those water cooler moments, you know, those are proven to give you that insights to what is just a graph, and changing that and turning that into something you could possibly implement. It's about the conversations that happen, you know, from a brainstorm point of view as well. At the Media Shop, we believe in like diversity of thought, you know, whereas you might interpret a specific set of data or trends in a certain way, as opposed to me. And having those kind of conversations all lead up to a desired change or a response to a specific change. So yes. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, and I definitely think that with you just saying that it really is about conversations, is you can't get anything out of people if you're not having a proper conversation.
Absolutely.
And understanding. I love that.
Yeah.
So I want to quickly just come to our vice president on the panel, because I feel as though this question is so suited for you. We are going to be getting into some of the questions that are coming through on the chat. Thank you so much for them. Please do not be shy. Come on through with us just getting into how to keep up with evolving market trends, initiatives, and opportunities. I can't believe we've only got 15 minutes left of our webinar for the most awards for 2022. But like I said, it does mean that we are closer to the actual awards themselves. So don't forget to get your ticket at www.quicklink.co.za/book tickets. So Mr. Vice President Srini Naika, I wanted to please ask you, how is it that we are able to maybe cultivate a workplace culture of dynamism as well as agility in both how they are led and how they operate? Because this is something that people find very difficult to be able to do. And how would you say that one can do so successfully?
Thanks, Adele. I think I alluded to it in my earlier response, but I really want to latch onto Kahelo's point. It's such a powerful statement, diversity of thought. And it's about people, and it goes back to that. And also Graham's point on impact. You can only actually achieve impact in your business through your people. So getting back to what we're doing, and I think, you know, obviously post-COVID and the new changes to basically our media and marketing world, we lead very much from an outcome-based style rather than a time-based style. It's so important to actually kind of bring the flexibility to your people within a culture, from a cultural perspective and within the environment, to actually get the best out of them. Because those 2 years that passed actually really changed the behavior of how our people and basically how our businesses have operated. And I mentioned a point earlier as well with regards to resilience. I think if leadership and companies do not basically kind of bring the resilience back to their people to actually be transparent and actually utilize their skill sets and expertise to basically drive the resilience that's required in an ever-changing, constant world right now, we're going to fall flat, or those businesses would not be successful. So, I mean, you know, for us, culture is basically, it's really output-based. It's giving that flexibility. It's allowing the individual to be their new self. And I say new self after these two difficult years that we've actually gone through.
We all changed, yes. We're different people.
But also touching to what Lindile said earlier, it's, you know, we've also taken a view of consolidation. Media consolidation is crucial right now in our space right now, because of all this big data and programmatic initiatives that's taking place. Media consolidation, more collaboration is crucial, because you also allow your people to think out of the box. And that's also another new cultural change as well. You know, ultimately they're boxed into basically the entity they actually reside within. But now allowing more collaboration allows them to also give fresh perspective that informs a new culture outside of what they're doing, but bringing it back in the business as well. So that said, I want to give my colleagues a chance to talk as well, but that's really my view and our view from a Paramount perspective.
I really appreciate that, especially with you bringing in collaboration. Kaugelo, I just want to come back to you, because that brings me to something that I want to know from you in terms of how changing consumer behavior has pushed traditional media to collaborate with other mediums. How would you say exactly that has happened?
I think for me, I would say the consumer is constantly changing,
Yeah.
I'm reminded of the quote, the only constant thing in life is change. And it's always at a fast pace. And so has it really changed the separation of traditional versus other media? I think more than anything, it's forced us to not look at it as two separate things in terms of traditional media and other mediums, but rather in terms of integrating the two, because that's how the consumer sees it. When they're interacting with a brand or with a specific touch point, it's not from a linear way, but more in terms of how it feeds into each other. So the biggest change for me in terms of how the two have come together is that it's forced us to come together. I can't just think about TV in isolation. I need to think about how it's connected to digital, how it's connected to every other touch point from a marketing and from a brand experience point of view, and making it sure that it has a holistic and a combined meaning and messaging when it actually comes to the consumer, because they're seeing it as one thing. They're not seeing it as traditional media and other mediums, but rather as an experience and as a touch point with the specific brand.
Yeah.
So we've definitely moved from traditional media and other media and more in terms of just media as a whole and a complete experience for the consumer as a whole.
Yes. And like Srini had mentioned, we've all changed a lot over the last 2 years, not just in terms of weight gain for some of us. We're working on it. But this is something that is very, very true. And that's why I think that we see such a big change in terms of how people are doing things. So Lindile, I want to come to you because there's a huge emphasis on measuring ROI and using big data to drive that. But do you think that industry, particularly agency and clients, are ready for outcome-based revenue models, considering that measuring tools have improved in the recent years?
Actually, Zanele, this question takes after the one that Srini spoke about, culture. Because whatever approach you take is going to influence the culture of your organization. But in terms of outcomes, every organization has an outcome and an objective that they're trying to achieve. How you get there is influenced by a couple of things. One of them is the culture piece that Srini was talking about, but also data plays a critically important part in those, be it the ROIs or anything else. So for example, revenue is an outcome, and therefore it's a return on investment of some sort. But what is that investment? And I look at revenue as a lag indicator, not as a lead indicator. And by that I mean is that there's a couple of other things you have to do right up front for that outcome to be achieved. And therefore, how do you drive those pillars? If there's a lag indicator, Zanele, it means that there's a lead indicator or a couple of those lead indicators. But the lead indicators are then influenced by information, because how you achieve a lead indicator, there's some activity behind that lead indicator. So, but you have to know what that activity must be, for who, when, and how. That then leads to you achieving that lead indicator. And then a combination of lead indicators will then result into a lag indicator, which is revenue, for example. But you need information to know when to act, how to act, and most importantly, why you should act at that particular time. So that's where then the data and the insights are absolutely critical to that. And I'll relate that to client side. If the client has a couple of products that they have, and those products speak to different parts of the segment, now they need information in terms of what is the makeup of each of those particular segments, and what are the triggers that result into an outcome that it'll meet the objective of that organization. Therefore, use those insights to then come up with campaigns, for example, that will land at the right time to the right person to drive a specific type of outcome and an activity, be it a conversion, be it a lead, be it, or whatever it is that they're trying to achieve. So therefore, insights, data, and information is absolutely critical to an outcomes-based approach. But the culture of how all of this is done is actually critical to make sure, to what Srini was saying, is the people that are behind each of these or are working together feel as if they're seen, they're heard, and they come as themselves, that they don't feel as if in the workplace, for example, they have to be someone else or they have to pretend to be something they're not in order to get to those outcomes. So data achieves one thing, but then more robustly, in what context does it all happen in? So balancing that is absolutely important.
Sure. I love this theme of us making sure that our teams are well looked after. It makes me very, very happy because it also just allows for success. But just keeping on ROI very quickly, because we've only got around about 7 minutes left. Charlie, I want to just come to you, please, because of course we've been talking about trends today and it's all good and well to keep up with them. But how exactly do you track ROI and attribution across media channels once you've started implementing them?
Thanks, Anila. Yeah, so I just want to mention one thing, Lindile. I loved what you were saying. And I also think organizations, you know, from a change perspective, it's celebrating an innovation perspective, it's celebrating the small wins, you know, because innovation doesn't have to be massive, it can be small. So from a culture perspective, it's a brilliant way to foster innovation. And then, sorry, back to the measurement capabilities. So, you know, the digital media has had the capability for quite a while now to track digital conversions, including website visits, app downloads, whatever the case may be, purchases on site. Yeah. But audio, for example, has been hard to replicate that up until now. You know, tracking audio is quite difficult. We hear an ad possibly on your radio, and you might act on it on a different device when you get to the office. But it's really exciting. You know, there's new technology coming in all the time. Many agencies use different types of technology to track attribution, and they have their own attribution modeling. But for us, we have a product called AdsWiz, and actually it's advances in audio tracking capability using first-party cookies. And it's brought the same tracking capabilities from other media to audio and podcasts and digital audio, which is really, really exciting. So when we talk about innovation and trends, so digital audio is a trend, but many clients are quite hesitant to use it right now well, not hesitant, but you know, it hasn't exploded in yet, which it will. But then it's testing those attribution models that media owners have, which is really important. And then also pre and post campaign surveys, you know, whether you do it through Millward Brown, for example, or you talk to media owners. I know Prime Media has something called Prime Connect. We've got something called Sound Insights, where they have this massive database of listeners that they can survey, you know, for innovative campaigns. And then setting the right KPIs and finding those benchmarks is so important. I think that's what Lindile was saying, is that you need to understand what you want to achieve at the end of it, so that you can measure it. And then, you know, even, you know, we've got retailers who use something I like to call the dark data method, which is literally switching off different data points or media points and testing other data points. Data is everything right now, and how you get to it doesn't really matter, but you need to know why you want the data and what the outcomes are, so that you can find the trackable links for attribution modeling.
Yes. And of course, like you said, it really is something important in terms of finding out the pre and post. I think that's always such a good indicator. But I want us to quickly, as we wrap things up in just 1 minute, Srini and Graham, there were questions that came through for you. And Graham, I want to please start off with you. And the question from our incredible audience today is asking, how important is synergy across media channels, especially when it comes to media planning, to maximize reach and ensure that we are targeting correctly?
Okay. Good question, but I think there's essentially 3 questions in one question there. So let me try and break it down in my filing cabinet. So the first starting point I would say is, I mean, there's a number of studies that exist between sort of your Kantar's and Wack and Millward Brown, like Charlie was saying, CCS, our own proprietary data as well. Let's put a little plug in there. That proves that using more channels than one singular channel to build reach or campaign eyeballs and ears will always be more effective when you combine two. Well, should I say more than one? Right. Yeah. You don't have to suddenly throw in every single channel. That's probably a bit not great ROI either. But you should always be looking at least 2 channels to build that story. And going back to what I said right at the start about digital being a facilitation, I think digital just has an incredible role, regardless of what channels you're using, to facilitate the integration of channels. I think we're all guilty over the past in this industry of running 360-degree campaigns, right? I think I came from about the mid-2000s, and people were talking about 360. You'd have a TVC, you'd articulate that TVC for radio, you put the TVC on digital, et cetera, but now we can all see very clearly the more you integrate that story, and each touch point has a different story facilitated by digital, you'll find yourself having huge impact. So I would say, for me, that's the key element. Combining channels delivers good reach. It's effective, it's efficient, and last but not least, I would say that it just creates huge impact when you tell that story together and you move away from 360.
Amazing.
Can I just say one point? Because I've been listening to you guys, and I was dying to just say something, but I didn't want to interrupt. Hopefully I answered the question, first of all.
Yes, you did.
I just wanted to say, everyone's talking about how much humans have changed. And I sort of, it's just something I always talk about at the office, is I don't think humans have changed that much. I just think it's how we do stuff has changed. So like, we still laugh, we love, we eat chocolates, we do financial transactions, we go to the beach. It's just how we do it's different, right? And we've got more access to how we can now do those different things. You've seen from the COVID pandemic that everyone said, oh my word, the world has changed. It's completely different. Look at the normalization of human behavior the moment restrictions were eased. Humans are creatures of habit. How we do things has changed. Humans themselves, our heart beats and our breathing mechanism and how we walk, it's the same as it's always
been. The same.
So I just wanted to say that at the end, because I think we need not to panic about humans are completely different. We have to throw them. Let's not use that term. We have to throw it all out, right? We have to start again. It's incorrect. We can do what we've been doing before. We just got to do it a little bit differently when it comes to deploying the tactics around those human behaviors.
Sure. Did I not say that we were having a discussion here today? I love that. But I also wanted us to quickly just finish off with you, Srini, please. Last question with 1 minute. Omnichannel has been a buzzword when it comes to customer experience, but it has not necessarily come to full fruition locally. What are your thoughts with this trend, and how can we capitalize by providing the consumers with an experience that feels personal and seamless? That, of course, from our audience. Srini, 1 minute before we say goodbye.
Yeah, I'm not going to talk about the broadcast piece because that's another piece altogether from an omnichannel perspective in terms of what Paramount and Prime Media is trying to do. But from a consumer perspective, going back to your earlier question, it relates so well in terms of data and how you actually kind of omnichannel or create omnichannel currencies between different platforms. Be aware of streaming. Streaming is going to take our market by storm. It already has, through the likes of the Disney Pluses, the Amazon Primes, and everybody as well. But streaming through OTT and through the telcos, going to drive consumer behavior, be it audio, be it video content, be it other digital gaming forms, into one type of platform with multiple players playing in that space. The good thing is how we're going to basically monitor the consumer consumption is really through all the great data that some of our telcos have as one example. So they've got a whole host of DMPs and CMSs that they're currently putting together. And I was fortunate enough because we're launching something called Pluto TV in a few months to come, which is going to be led, and it's going to basically be the new aggregator or the new carriage of content, be it audio or video, into one platform, together with gaming and various other forms of content. But ultimately, talking to that point, that becomes an omni-channel. Then we have to form an omni-channel currency, but it's going to be informed by basically the omni-channel DM that we can basically immerse. Obviously, DMP standing for data management platforms that we can immerse in there and understand consumer behavior better, which ties back to exactly what we all said about just now, Zanele, around big data, around programmatic, around more. So it's a topic that I can't talk about in a minute, please. There's so much. But ultimately, streaming is basically where we're going. The government's decision to migrate onto DTT is going to give more access to bandwidth. Data is going to become cheaper. We're going to get much faster communication methods as well, like 5G within South Africa. And that's the new media that's actually coming our way. It's already come, but it's going to be even more efficient in a few months to come.
Amazing. No, please. I think that this just speaks to how we could have yet another panel discussion with us having a conversation just about that and a whole lot more. But thank you so much to our incredible panel, Srini Naika, Lindile Tloko, Graham Denise, Kaukelo Masenya, Charlie Wanal, as well as, of course, you coming and being a part of the conversation and just being here with us as we get ready for the Most Awards 2022, how to keep up with evolving market trends, initiatives, and opportunities. To our panel, thank you so much. You are absolutely incredible. All the best for the Most Awards, because I can imagine that you are going to be doing absolutely the most. But a very big thank you as well to Jacaranda FM, Prime Media Broadcasting, GH Media, Gagasi FM, Heart FM, DSTV Media Sales, Spark Media, Paramount Africa, Media Mark, The Media Shop, Arena Holdings, Kara, YFM, Nalesa Media, Talk Media, Ebony and Ivory, Mediology, Cape Talk, 702-947, EWN, KFM, and The Media Online. And please don't forget to book your tickets, www.quicklink.co.za/book tickets. Once again, to our panel, thank you guys. You were absolutely incredible. And we will see you at the Most Awards, yes?
Thank you so much.
Thank you guys. Cheers. And thank you for joining us. We'll see you at the 2022 Most Awards. From myself, Zanele Potelwa. Have an incredible day and goodbye.